We've got barbecue back here. You're all invited. Welcome to the Sloopcast. How are you doing today, Kyle?
Doing all right, Jared. Doing all right. How are you doing today?
No big complaints. New tradition, good tradition. There we go. Get that noise gate on and we're on our way. Yeah, God, it's been a busy week. Less than 7 days removed from a national title, and there's been some ups and some downs. I'll just say, generally speaking, don't let the downs get you two downs. You're still national champions. Nothing's going to take that away. There was always going to be some off-season challenges. We maybe didn't know exactly what those off-season challenges were going to be. We did know what some of them would be, but we've some people have been surprised by a couple. I mean, elephant in the room, Jim Knowles on his way to Penn State. There's a lot of reporting as to exactly what happened, and I'm not going to get into it because even though I do trust the people making those reports, even those people making those reports will acknowledge that what they're getting as an explanation as to what happened is Ohio State's side of the story. We don't have Jim Knowles' side of the story. And quite frankly, I want to talk about, who we're going to get to replace him, who else on the coaching staff may or may not leave, not with him, because I don't think he's going to take any of the accountable coaches with him. But like, who else might leave from the coaching staff? And then I want to do a depth chart for the spring. Let's not go crazy and say for the fall. Let's say a spring depth chart. And I just don't even care to get into the whys of it. This is Ohio State. It's next man up, even for the coaches. So Jim Knowles gone. He goes to Penn State. That sucks. Would much rather he had gone to Oklahoma or even Notre Dame, which are both two possibilities. Going to Penn State, that sucks.
Yeah, it's honestly like it's a lot of rumblings over the weekend here. And then obviously with Sunday coming around here, that noise got louder and louder. And then knowing the inevitable was going to happen here, it was just a matter of which way was that wind blowing. Yeah. And it wasn't towards Ohio State.
No. Spike says you win a natty, this happens. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Nick Saban had to replace his coordinators every 2 years because the poachers came coming.
Yeah. Happens with Alabama all the time. It's just a matter of you filling in those gaps with just maybe not always going to be home run, being able to just pick up right where Ohio State left off. And that's number one in the vast majority of defensive stats. That's pretty much impossible to try to do. But you want to fill in someone who can still keep the train rolling still, even if it's not the best defense in the country.
Yeah, and as far as like the rest of the coaches go, don't be surprised if Chip Kelly ends up leaving too. We don't want that. We love Chip Kelly here. But the there's at least 3 different NFL teams sniffing around Chip Kelly right now. One of them's Houston. Could potentially go and coach CJ Stroud. You feel great for CJ Stroud. You'd feel bad for Ohio State. I believe Jacksonville is another one. And, the NFL is still churning. The NFL coaching carousel is still spinning. Even if those positions get filled up, there might be new positions open up and, it's the coaching carousel. It just keeps turning. So don't be surprised if Chip Kelly ends up leaving too. And again, as Spike said, this is what happens when you win a natty. Your coaches become hot commodities and they get poached. This is the downside of success. Now, Herman left last time. He did. He absolutely did. And Ash left the year after. So yeah, I mean, it is what it is. This is the downside of success. And just know that you could have lost to Notre Dame and all of this would also have been happening.
Mm-hmm.
So, as far as like the, non-coordinator staffs, the rest of the staff, I don't expect any movement on the offensive side. There were some people sniffing around Justin Fry from the NFL. That looks to maybe not be happening now. It looks like Fry's going to stay. Loughlin's going to stay. Hartline's not going anywhere. Bailey's going to stay. Defensive side, I don't expect there to be a bunch of these guys follow Knowles to Penn State, including Matt Guerrieri, who is essentially Knowles' protege and Ohio State safety coach. The Larry Johnson, who knows? He's not a young man. He could retire at any time. Laurinaitis isn't going anywhere. Coach Walton's not going anywhere. So I don't expect a ton of movement on the coaching staff outside of perhaps the coordinators themselves. And we have already seen one.
I was going to say with Knowles leaving, Laurinaitis most likely staying too, because there was some rumblings about Laurinaitis maybe not wanting to stick around if Knowles was around too, just because of how he wanted his linebacking crew to do.
Yeah. Tony Gerdeman confirming that. Oh, did he publicly confirm that? Yeah. My understanding is that there was a decent, it was been pretty widely published that Larry Johnson Sr. and Jim Knowles didn't get along. And I'm not going to swear that this is true. Don't take this as me reporting this, because I don't report things. I'm a commentator, not a journalist. I'm a dude who cracks a beer at the beginning of the episode. So please confirm what I'm saying with your local legitimate newsman. My understanding is a lot of the defensive coaching staff didn't really like him. Is kind of the vibe I've been getting this weekend.
Right.
But again, I really don't want to get into that stuff. Let's look forward.
That's the question that everybody's asking for right now is what's the future of this Ohio State team? What is Coach Day going to look for to replace Jim Knowles?
Kyle, well, I don't know if it's a short list. How many names is a short list? It's a list. Let's just say it's a list. I have a few names here. I think some of these names have been pretty widely discussed as far as who could be Ohio State's next defensive coordinator. I think I maybe dug up a couple myself that I haven't seen other people mentioning. Although I think the longer this Sunday rolls on, I think the more support I'm hearing for Matt Guerrieri himself. He knows Coach Knowles' defense better than anyone other than maybe Coach Knowles himself. He does have, although very limited, defensive coordinating experience. He was the defensive coordinator at Indianapolis before that entire coaching staff was let go and Coach Cignetti came in. So, but he does have defensive coordinating experience, although limited. Ryan Day went out of his way during the national championship celebration in the shoe on Sunday to call him a future star in coaching. And while the public may not have known that Jim Knowles was going to Penn State when Coach Day said that, believe me when I tell you, Coach Day knew. Coach Day knew. Potentially a tip of the hat from Coach Day as to where Ohio State's going with this. You get continuity with the defensive system that you've been running. And in my mind, because Guerrieri is pretty young, I do wonder if even if Matt Guerrieri doesn't become the defensive coordinator. I think at the very least, you see him get a co-defensive coordinator, and maybe they get someone more experienced to come in over him, much like we saw with Brian Hartline. And then just sort of, I'm going to use the word groom. I know the word has taken on new meanings, but it's still apt, damn it. Just to sort of groom Guerreri into taking over as the full-time defensive coordinator when he's ready, which again is not dissimilar to what Day and Kelly are doing with Brian Hartline right now. So keep an eye right there in the whack with Coach Guerreri. That then does lead to, having a new open spot, and who do you get to back? You still have an open countable coach spot at that point. But we'll worry about that should Guerreri get promoted. We'll cross that bridge if we even come to it. Kyle, who's another name we should be watching out for defensive coordinator?
A familiar name, Jeff Hafley. Currently the Packers defensive coordinator, which may be a long shot. I mean, you got I
think it's a long shot.
NFL defensive coordinator going to a college defensive coordinator. Long shot, but it's a name to keep an eye out for. Obviously, Ohio State ties. I personally think that would be a great rehire for Coach Day again. But again, I think that's a long shot.
Yeah, and I'm Googling it right now. Yeah, Hafley. I don't know. Yeah, I think this is saying that he makes about $4 million a year. I don't know how true that is. I just did a very quick Google search as the coordinator for Green Bay. So he would be taking a pretty drastic pay cut to come to Columbus.
Mm-hmm.
So I understand the appeal of Jeff Hafley. Ryan Day's hired him once already. The 1 year that Ohio State had him as the defensive coordinator, the defense was solid, more than solid, spectacular. So are we ruling Saban out for now? Listen, do I think Saban's going to be the next offensive coordinator at Ohio State? No, I do not. Then again, I wouldn't have said Chip Kelly was going to be the next offensive coordinator 12 months ago. So, hey, what the hell do I know? I am joking. We're all joking. I'm not actually trying to start Nick Saban rumors. Or am I? No, I'm not. I think another name potentially to keep an eye on, Corey Heatherman. He was the defensive coordinator at James Madison under Coach Curt Cignetti. He earned the FCS Assistant Coach of the Year award in 2022. In 2024, he got to be the defensive. He was brought into Minnesota to be the defensive coordinator for the Golden Gophers. And a few weeks ago, Miami actually hired him away from Minnesota. He has a lot of defensive coordinating experience at the FCS level. He does have 1 year in the Big Ten as a defensive coordinator. And Minnesota, opponents points per game, 10th in the country. Opponent yards per game, 6th in the country. Opponents points per play, 12th in the country. Opponent yards per play, 14th in the country. Yeah, you can do the Jared's Gophers meme all you want, Spikes. I think this is a legitimate possibility. You can do it too, Kyle. I think this is a legitimate possibility. This is speculation on my part, not a name I've seen thrown around a lot. I don't know if the Miami job is something that Ohio State could or couldn't break him away from, contractually speaking, or yada, yada, yada. I don't know all the details in that space, but if it's possible, I think it's a decent look. Who do you have, Kyle?
Another name?
Yeah.
There's a number number of people here. I think another name that I think a lot of people would like is Nick Bennett. I cannot pronounce his name. Benedetto, the former Northern Illinois defensive coordinator. I think there's a lot to like about him. He had things rolling over at NIU. Top 15 in a lot of the major categories defensively too, including number 3 in opponents' yards per game. Maybe a name that Ohio State may make a phone call to.
Sure. He was recently hired by Fresno away from Northern Illinois, but it's Fresno. Whatever. I talked a bit about Heatherman, who's a former Cignetti disciple, or maybe just is a Cignetti disciple. I have another Cignetti disciple. He's the current defensive coordinator at Indiana, Bryant Haynes. He not only is the current defensive coordinator at Indiana under Cignetti, but he also was the defensive coordinator when James Madison first entered the FBS under Cignetti. His defensive coordinating position under Cignetti goes back far enough that he was the co-DC back when Heatherman was the DC at James Madison. So a long time under Coach Cignetti. Indiana went from not much in 2024. And granted, this was a whole team makeover, including a lot of transfer talent from James Madison and elsewhere. So it's not like he had the exact same players, but the turnaround in Indiana was immediate. Points per game, 7th in the country, yards per game, 2nd in the country, points per play, 8th in the country, yards per play, 3rd in the country. Cignetti gets results. How much of that is Haynes and how much of that is Cignetti? I don't know, but potentially another name to keep an eye on.
Mm-hmm. What about the Hoosier defensive coordinator?
That's what I just said.
I'm sorry. I'm looking down the list here. There's 2 other names. I think they're widely, wild shot out of left field here. Both defensive coordinators for, it's going to sound funny, but the Texas and Alabama defensive coordinators.
Sure.
Some names to keep an eye out for as well.
Listen, worst case scenario, you give them a call and you force Texas and Bama to pay them more. It's like bidding on something at auction just to drive the price up a bit. Why not? Pete Golding, the current defensive coordinator at Ole Miss.
Speaking of SEC.
Speaking of Alabama, former defensive coordinator at Alabama.
Why not take more from Ole Miss here, right?
Well, that's what I'm saying. Maybe Iggy has an in. Yeah, he would. Maybe Iggy has an in. You don't know. But yeah, Ole Miss had a tremendous defense this year. 4th in the country, points per game, yards per game, 17th in the country, points per play, 2nd in the country, yards per play, 4th in the country. Ole Miss had a tremendous defense this year. Excuse me. Hey, give him a call. He did have some rough years in Bama. It probably should be pointed out. I believe, excuse me, swallowed my beer wrong. Maybe he's grown since then. Maybe there were issues outside of his control at Alabama. I'm not sure. We did have a couple rough years at Alabama as their defensive coordinator, should be pointed out.
Mm-hmm.
All right, Kyle, one more name on the list, Jim Leonard. Do you have any thoughts on Jim Leonard?
I think if it's any position from the NFL to go back down to the college level is any kind of assistant or not the main defensive or offensive coordinator.
Sure,
so
getting a title promotion.
So like a pass coordinator, safety position. I think those are all definitely feasible options rather than like Halfley, for instance.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, sure.
Yeah, and if that name sounds familiar to you, but you're not quite placing it, he was the interim coach at Wisconsin before Luke Fickell was brought in. He's a Wisconsin football player. Like, this is a Big Ten guy. Might be able to bring him back into the college ranks. Maybe not. But, see what you got. All right, Kyle. Any other thoughts on the defensive coordinator coaching hunt, or you want to move into the depth chart?
It's still we're still in the early stage here.
For sure.
Obviously, the good news here is that the portal has passed for Ohio State.
I don't think this would have left to a bunch of portal departures anyway, if I'm being honest.
Most likely, but I mean, it still helps though. And Ohio State they still want to move quickly, but they're not on a time crunch to get a defensive coordinator in place like in the next 2 days or whatever. So they can take some time, a little bit of time to find the right fit.
1 to 2 weeks. I would expect someone to be in place in 2 weeks or less.
Would be so
my assumption.
I would say so too.
All right, Kyle. Anything else as far as the defensive coordinator hunt goes?
Good.
All right. Let's take a quick ad break. We're going to come back and we're going to look at the offensive depth chart prediction for the spring. All right. You can visit our Patreon page at patreon.thesloopcast.com, where you can contribute to the show financially. There's discord.thesloopcast.com. That's where you can join our community. I'll let you know that the people in the Discord server knew about this before the general public did. I'll tell you that much. YouTube.thesloopcast.com, which may or may not be where you're watching this right now. If you're listening to the audio version, yes, there is a video version. If you're watching the video version, yes, there is an audio only version, which you can find in any podcast app. And if for whatever reason you can't find us, it's just rss.thesloopcast.com. That's our podcast feed. That's it. That's all the ads I feel like doing. So let's predict the offensive depth chart. All right, Kyle, I have a blank chalkboard here for us. Where would you like to start?
Oh, let's do the easy ones. Let's do the wide receivers.
All right. You want to start with wide receiver 1?
Ooh. Yeah.
Jeremiah Smith.
Himself. Yeah, to no surprise.
Yes. Well, honestly, but I do have a backup in there as well.
Okay.
We have Mylan Graham, who I have as Jeremiah Smith's direct backup, as one of the outside wide receivers. I think it's worth noting that Mylan Graham could be Innis's backup in the slot instead. I had to pick one. I put him on the outside. I could be wrong here. He might be a slot guy. At least for the sake of 2025, a slot guy. So I might be wrong there. So keep that in mind. I already gave away the slot position, Kyle. So you just want to move over there?
Yeah. Innis. I mean, Innis is, I think, going to be a perfect fit for that position there.
Absolutely.
And, Jared,
good.
I'm saying Jared has in here David Adolph as well. So some new names and very talented receivers here, but some new names that Buckeye fans will start to get to know.
Yeah, Adolph is I don't know if I'm supposed to call him a walk-on or a former walk-on at this point. With the way the roster rules are changing in 2025, if people don't know this, there's no more scholarship limit. The NCAA dropped the scholarship limit. You can now have as many scholarship players as you want. However, you do have a roster limit of 105. So, are there walk-ons anymore? If you're on the roster, you can get a scholarship, is how this works now. The roster is smaller. I believe the roster limit before was like 125, if I'm remembering correctly. That's where all those walk-ons were filling in. So I'm not 100% how that works anymore, but David Adolph, either a walk-on or a former walk-on. I don't know how that works anymore. I mean, we'll see how it works.
Currently on the Ohio State scholarship grid, he's listed as a scholarship athlete.
I think he may have been given a scholarship at one point, even regardless of the. I just wanted to talk about the new scholarship rules, honestly.
All right. And then on the other side, Carnell Tate.
Yeah.
I mean, this is a fantastic. If you're a Buckeye fan, you got to be ecstatic seeing this lineup here, with Jeremiah Smith, Brandon Ennis, Carnell Tate as your starting trio at wide receiver, and Bryson Rogers, a name that we've mentioned multiple times throughout the last few years. Really like Rogers. I think he can fill in when need to. I think he's another really talented receiver that the Buckeyes have.
Yeah, and we talk about these past 6 or so days being a lot of ups and downs. There was a moment there where we thought Carnell Tate was going to hit the portal, because the poaching out there is very real right now. Jeremiah Smith and Carnell Tate walked away from bags of money to stay at Ohio State. Now, I'm sure they also got their bags at Ohio State. I know for a fact that Jeremiah Smith could have made more money elsewhere. I know for a fact Jeremiah Smith walked away from a bigger lump sum of cash to stay at Ohio State. Not just this week, but also as a freshman. You want to talk about a Buckeye? He is now twice passed up on lump sums of cash to be in Columbus. But yeah, we were real touch and go there for a while on Carnell Tate. Texas and Oregon are. Listen, I'll say it. Ohio State won't say it. Ryan Day won't say it. They were tampering like some mugs. I'm telling you right now.
Everybody does.
What? Ohio State would never.
It is the wild, wild west right there. Yeah,
it is.
All right. Let's finish up that line there. The tight ends here. I'm looking here. Losing G. Scott and Gerd to the departures here. So, Kakameric is a name. Christian is another player that Buckeye fans are familiar with too. But Jared, you have Max Clare, as the top tight end here.
Yeah, Merrick and Christian are your blockers. Claire's going to be more of a pass catcher. Claire, if anyone's not been following transfer portal stuff, joins Ohio State from Purdue. He is an Ohio kid. He's transferring back home. Purdue completely fell apart. Purdue had some great players, all of whom hit the portal. It's actually a shame that they weren't able to do something with all of those great players. But Max Clare is one of those great players, and he's now a Buckeye. And by the way, I said he's more of a pass catcher. He's still a completely adequate blocker. Don't get me wrong.
And I know I'm kind of going out of subject here, but like great players hitting the transfer portal. What's happening to Notre Dame's offensive line?
Oh yeah, that's a rabbit hole I'd love to jump down with you right now, but we're not going to do it. We don't have time.
All right. Let's do the quarterback. Let's do quarterback next here. Everybody knows this is Julian Sands' team.
Yeah.
This next year, St. Clair is arguably your number 2
probably
quarterback. Then
it's hard. I'm gonna be like I want to be super upfront. This is me assuming that there's going to be additional departures in. Clean Holes is still on the team. Clean Holt is still on the team. I do think that he's going to hit the portal eventually, probably in the spring. So that's why I exclude him from this list. I do think Ohio State's probably going to look for a portal quarterback because Sayan's listen, all reports, Sayan's ready. Sayan will be ready. Sayan's your quarterback next year. St. Clair is a true freshman. I don't know if you want a true freshman as your backup quarterback or not. Mason Maggs, great player, walk-on / former walk-on. Probably not the most ideal situation to be in where your 2 backup quarterbacks are a true freshman and a walk-on / former walk-on. So we'll see what Ohio State can do in the portal, but you're not going to get a starting level guy from the portal unless you plan to start them. Mm-hmm. And that's the issue you're going to have with Ohio State. They're not going to have 2, you're not going to have a Brown on the bench this year. Or next year rather. It's not going to happen. So,
or Noland.
Well, I mean, Nolan would have been a completely unexperienced redshirt freshman regardless. I don't know if that's an improvement over St. Clair or not, quite frankly.
All right. Running backs. Ohio State losing their top 3 running backs. So they're coming in. They're coming in here with their just a fresh slate of running backs here.
Yeah.
Peoples, Jackson, Rogers, and West are your 3 running back 3 running backs here, and Donaldson. Forgot about Donaldson too.
And don't forget about TC Caffey
next year.
And don't forget about TC Caffey.
Forgot about TC Caffey. Yeah.
Yeah. He was a walk-on. Well, I'm just going to keep calling them walk-ons until I have clarity. Otherwise, I'm tired of saying / former walk-on. TC Caffey, a walk-on, was a guy who I think we were looking to get some carries and be on the field this year. Unfortunately, hurt his knee during camps. Blew up his ACL, so he ends up not getting to participate this season. But he was a guy who we were anticipating being, the 3rd running back behind our 2 studs up front. So I still have him as the 3rd running back. This appears to be people's role to go with. You'll have Donaldson and Caffey as your backups. They have 3 really good freshmen coming in. Ohio State does. But I think a couple of them Bo Jackson's coming in off of an injury. Isaiah West, I think, is, with all due respect, more of a developmental player, not someone he's guy who's going to redshirt. And then I can't remember the 3rd guy's name. Also an incredibly talented running back, but also coming off of an injury.
West.
Not Isaiah West.
Rogers,
thank you. Rogers coming off of an injury, Jackson coming off of an injury, Isaiah West, like I said, a guy who you're planning on probably redshirting. So, this is why you have to go get CJ Donaldson. This is why you get TC Caffey. And maybe we see either Rodgers or Rodgers or Jackson participate later in the season. But, it's hard to come back from an injury.
Yep.
And play, especially in the spring and whatnot. So,
Yep. All right. The offensive line, lot of departures this year on the offensive line here. So I think whatever is said here can change quickly, just depending on development. And I mean, the portal does open back up later this spring here, and you never know.
And the portal can open up at any time for individual teams too if their head coach leaves. So portal season's never really over. But yeah, left tackle. Speaking of the portal, Kyle, I put the pronunciation guide for Ethan in the rosters. How do we pronounce his name? If you check the rosters and coaches channel, I put a pronunciation guide in there. I forgot to put it in the notes.
Oh, geez. You're going to have to give me a moment to pull that up.
Listen,
here.
I think he transfers in from Rice. He's your left tackle. Ian Moore will be a redshirt freshman next year. I think he is. I think he's your heir apparent at left tackle. I really do. I know he had a really good year of practice at Ohio State. The coaching staff is very high on him. I think it's entirely possible you see Ian Moore as the left tackle for Ohio State in 2026. 2025, Ethan
Onienwa.
That's as good as we're going to do today. Ethan Onienwa, 1 year of eligibility from Rice. But an incredible left tackle, great portal addition for Ohio State.
All right.
And by the way, was practicing with Ohio State during playoff prep.
Yeah, and a lot of the incoming freshmen as well too.
That's right.
Left guard.
I have Austin Sareveld in at left guard right now. Now, I just want to say this up front. I think Ohio State has like 5 interior offensive linemen who could start next year. So I'm going to give you 5 names and y'all can shuffle them however you want, quite frankly. I'm going to give Austin Sareveld the start at left guard here. He might be right guard. He might be the backup guard. I don't know. And for what it's worth, Ohio State's Kyle brought up those Notre Dame offensive linemen who hit the portal. I know Ohio State's in contact with one of them. So this could even just totally change again, depending upon what happens with the portal. If we move over to center, Carson Hinsman retakes over the center job after McCullough gets hurt. I know the coaching staff really likes Joshua Padilla. Joshua Padilla could be the starting center next year. Hinsman's going to start. I tell you this much. I feel what I can tell you about the interior of the offensive line, Hinsman's going to start. What I can't tell you is where. I'll tell you he's going to start, though. I'll tell you right now he's going to start. Where? That I don't know. But he's going to start. Right now, I have Hinsman as the starting center, Joshua Padilla as the backup center. That could change. Joshua Padilla could be the starting center, and Hinsman might be out to left guard again. Don't know. And at right guard, I have Tager Chibola returning at right guard, Luke Montgomery behind him. Again, take the 2 names at center, Hinsman and Padilla. One of them will get center. One of them won't. The other one could end up a guard. Then take Austin Sareveld, Tager Chibola, and Luke Montgomery. Take all 5 of those guys, shuffle them into the interior offensive line, and I'm not going to disagree with you. If you want to tell me, nah, Luke Montgomery is going to start at right guard and Tager is going to be his backup, I'm not going to disagree with you. Like, I'm just not going to do it. I don't know how this shakes out, to be honest. I can tell you it's probably going to be one of those 5 guys unless a portal guy shows up. Right tackle. Phillip Daniels joins Ohio State from Minnesota. Ohio kid coming back home via the transfer portal. I have Carter Lowe, who is a true freshman, who will be coming. I don't know if he's already in the program or not, but true freshman joining the program. I have him as the backup right tackle. Don't be shocked if he enters the conversation at the interior next year as well. Probably not. But I think Ohio State has depth on the offensive line for the first time in a long time, because I really like Ian Moore and I really like Carter Lowe. Carter Lowe's a true freshman next year. Don't necessarily want him starting, but if injuries become injuries, sometimes you got to do what you got to do. But Carter Lowe's a future star at Ohio State. You can bank that.
Yep. All right.
Do you have any thoughts, Kyle?
No, again, we are 6 days. Well, when this is released, we are a week since the Ohio State won the national title here.
Yeah.
Very, very early on. Just early thoughts about what we thought we could see here. But I totally anticipate the offensive line to be different than what we have currently here.
You can say better. It's okay. You can say it.
All right. We're going to take our second ad break real quick and talk the defensive side here. The Sloopcast.com is your go-to link for all Sloopcast related. Jared mentioned it already. Won't bore you with all the links again. Just go to thesloopcast.com for all those links. So we'll take our second ad break and talk about the defense.
You know, Kyle, you say we're only a week removed from the national title game. I'd like to point out to you that we're only 5 or 6 weeks away from spring camp.
Five. We are only 5 weeks away. And Ryan Day, I think I mentioned in our last episode, Ryan Day mentioned that this spring practice, spring camp, is going to look vastly different than years past. And it's going to have to. It's going to have to.
Absolutely. Like I talked about during that episode, you do have a lot of roster turnover. So, but yeah. Defense.
Right, defensive side.
Where do you want to start?
I don't know. I guess let's start up front. You lose a lot.
Yeah.
You're losing Hamilton.
The entire defensive line.
Yeah, your entire defensive line. But the backups for the defensive line,
sure,
pretty darn good. They're pretty darn good. So
pretty darn good.
Are they going to be elite like what we saw last year? Probably not. But they're going to be very solid, very, very solid here. I think this defensive line is going to be one of the strengths of not just the defense side, but I think of all the positions at Ohio State in the 2025 season.
I'll venture again. Kyle, I don't think they're going to take a big step down as far as the defensive line's concerned.
I don't think so either. Now, I'm not saying they're going to be
and it needs to be
like last year. And
I would venture to say the defensive line wasn't elite for Ohio State last year until the second half of the season. But regardless, what I'll also say is that these guys are backups who are becoming starters, but that doesn't mean they aren't experienced, because they have been rotating in for a couple years now, especially some of them. And one of the guys who we've seen been playing from the backup position a lot is Caden Curry. Yeah.
Senior coming into the 2025 season here. You got that veteran defensive end, and on the other side too, Kenyatta Jackson. You got some really
Kyle's
experienced. I know. I was just looking at the defensive ends here.
You're good. You're fine. I'm just teasing
you. Very, very experienced guys, just like with Sawyer and JT last year. You're going to have very experienced guys on the outside.
Yeah. And I want to point this out because I think there exists a possibility. And of course, with Coach Knowles now leaving, I don't even want to venture a guess at this point what Ohio State's defense is going to look like next year, because why do that if you don't know who the defensive coordinator is going to be? But I know a thing that we've been talking about in the Discord server for a few weeks now is, hey, Ohio State could move to a 3-4 or at least a 3-3, an odd front. Let's just say an odd front where you'd have two defensive ends who aren't necessarily edge rushers, a nose tackle, and then outside linebackers.
So interesting thing that a lot of.
But I do want to say, for the sake of the depth chart today, we're sticking with a 4-2.
Yeah. Well, I would even say, like, even a 4-2, for many years, Jared, college football had become a very spread happy type of just overall, just so many teams just doing spread. But these last like 3 years or so, starting to see a lot more like just run heavy, multiple tight ends. Is 4-2
especially in the Big
feasible? Ten? Is 4-2 even going to be feasible? Do you have to go back to a 4-3? And I mean, Ohio State did the right thing this year, 4-2-5, but you have that
with Ransom and Downs.
You could play him up.
Yeah. But yeah, I think these are all interesting questions that I think we'll explore in future episodes, because it's a waste of time to do it now because we don't even know who the defensive coordinator is. So
right. Nose tackle. Love Caden McDonald. Love McDonald. Love Caden here McDonald. At nose tackle here. And Malone is a very experienced nose tackle, redshirt senior coming into the 25 season here. Really good player to be able just to rotate in.
Sure, absolutely. And let's go ahead and finish off the defensive line and move over to 3-tech defensive tackle. I have Edric Houston backed up by Jason Moore.
Yeah, pair of sophomores here to fill in the rest of the defensive tackle positions.
And we didn't talk about the backups at defensive end. We have Logan George backing up Caden Curry, who joins Ohio State from the FCS via the transfer portal. And I have CJ Hicks moving from linebacker down to defensive end to rotate with Kenyatta Jackson. That's a bit of a swing on I played a lot of this depth chart. I played safe. That one might be a bit of a swing. And if they move to a 3-4, I think, or 3-3, I think that CJ Hicks makes a really good outside linebacker. And if they move to more of a 4-3, a 4-3-4, and you have three linebackers on the field again, then, maybe he stays at linebacker. So a lot of this depends upon where the need is. Because I think Hicks should be on the edge, but I don't know. We just have to see what the defense is. We just have to see what the defense is. We have to see who the coordinator is going to be. Sure. But I wanted to take at least a couple swings with this depth chart, putting Adolph as the backup slot wide receiver and moving CJ Hicks the defensive end are two of my swings.
Yep. All right, linebackers. You're having to replace Cody Simon, Captain Cody Simon here. Not an easy
Blocko Cody Simon.
Yeah, not easy to do there, but Sony Styles will be in there, and Arvell Reese as well too. He's kind of had his moments and not had his moments in that position in his career at Ohio State so far.
I think Arvell Reese.
Well, he's been here for 2 years now. He's been here for 2 years. Like,
I think, I don't know. Arvell Reese, I think, is a future star at Ohio State. I think as he is able to take over the starting role, I think he's going to be huge for Ohio State next year.
Mm-hmm.
Spikes agrees. Backing up those two linebackers, I do have the starting linebackers, just to say it again, Sonny Styles and Arvell Reese. Backup linebackers, Peyton Pierce and Ty Howard. Peyton Pierce will be a true sophomore next year. Ty Howard joins Ohio State from Duquesne, a name that I will say for Kyle, because he could never say Duquesne. I'm from Eastern Ohio. I've lived close enough to Pittsburgh to know that is pronounced Duquesne. He is the older brother of incoming running back Bo Jackson. He's a Cleveland kid. He's a very experienced FCS linebacker. Will provide some great depth. For the record, you might swap Ty Howard and Peyton Pierce. I didn't put a lot of thought as far as to who's going to back up who. Just to throw that out there. And Kyle, since we're talking about the linebackers and since we were talking about the block O, I'm just going to go ahead and float this out there. I think Sonny Styles gets the block O for 2025. Thoughts? I know I blindsided you with that.
I mean, for a 4-2, I think this is fine, but we'll see.
You want to go back to a 4-3, don't you?
I think just based on what we've seen with, especially the Big Ten, yes, I think
Kyle is old school.
Not so much old school, but I just think what we've seen in the Big Ten these last few years, you got to be able to stop the run.
Well, Kyle, Ohio State was the number one defense in the country and in the Big Ten this year, running a 4-2.
I mean, that's fair. I mean, that is fair, but the way that they played that fifth secondary, though, it was key.
Absolutely. Yeah, no. Hancock played a huge role in that, who of course is gone. Downs played a huge role in that, who of course is returning, and Ransom played a huge role in that, who is gone. So absolutely.
Well, let's take care of the safeties then. I know I'm kind of jumping around here on your board here, but I think the safeties is pretty set in stone with Downs and Hartford as your two safeties.
I would say so. I'd also say I wouldn't be shocked. I think Hartford does start, but they're not going to keep Jalen McClain off the field much longer. I'm just going to say that. I think he was really good he's really impressive as a freshman this year. I don't know how they rotate him in.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe he gets some time at nickel. Maybe he and Hartford do a lot of rep splitting. I have Inky Jones, a walk-on from Steubenville, as the backup to Caleb Downs. If I'm being honest, it's probably Jalen McClain as the backup at both positions. If one of the two starting safeties go down, how do they reshuffle? Does one of them become the deep and the other, those are all questions that are more involved than we have time for in today's episode. But I think Jalen McClain's going to get on the field in a significant way this year, even if it's not as a starter.
Mm-hmm. All right. Corners. Burke, Hancock, and Simpson Hunt all gone.
Yep.
It's a lot of corners to have to replace there, but Iggy's back.
Which I have to say I wasn't expecting.
Yeah, no, just kind of like with Burke. Wasn't expecting Burke to be back last year. Big surprise. Happy to have Burke back.
Happy to have Iggy
same
back.
thing here. Yeah, you got Iggy back here. Really happy to have him back there. And I really like Aaron Scott too. Really young. Next year will be a true sophomore. Really like Aaron Scott.
Absolutely, 100%.
Then the other side, yeah, Matthews has really shown and has really shined in some of the games too.
Denzel Burke had some injury issues through the playoffs, and Matthews had a ton of reps, and Ohio State didn't miss a beat.
I know, yeah. So I think this is a very solid corner one, corner two with
100%
Iggy and Matthews.
And by the way, Aaron Scott,
I feel very confident with these two.
100%. for this defense losing as many players as they are, and they are, I love the starting lineup coming back. Mm-hmm. I do. I don't see any big holes in this lineup coming back at all. And by the way, as you mentioned, Aaron Scott,
nickel though,
completely capable backup. And I also have here. This is maybe, I don't know how much of a swing this is. Maybe it's because the hype around Devin Sanchez has already started at Ohio State. He's another one of these true freshmen who's been around for playoff practices. The hype around Devin Sanchez has already started. I went ahead and slotted him in as Jermaine Matthews' backup, even as a true freshman, even as he hasn't even attended a class at Ohio State yet. I'm already going to go ahead and slot him in as the backup cornerback behind Jermaine Matthews. Now we can talk about the nickel.
What about the nickel though? I think the nickel is. Oh, what's your take on the nickel here?
I have Lorenzo Styles starting at nickel. He was the backup nickel this year. Mm-hmm. But I think Bryce West, who came in in the same recruiting class as Aaron Scott, both Ohio guys, I think is totally capable. I think at the beginning of the year, I think they're going to split a lot of reps. And I think by the time you get to the end of the year, there might be more Bryce West reps than Lorenzo Style reps. If we're talking about who starts against Texas, I'm going to say it's Lorenzo Styles. If we're talking about who starts against Michigan, might be Bryce West.
I looking at this defensive line, I feel really confident. If this is your formation here, 4-2-5, I feel very, very confident 10 of those 11 positions is what we see on screen here.
Okay.
The nickel back, I'm just still unsure of though about with Lorenzo Styles still. Like we've seen some I just don't have the full confidence from what I've seen with Lorenzo.
Last year was his first year playing defense at the collegiate level. Let's give him a little bit of grace. He was a wide receiver at Notre Dame before he transferred to Ohio State. Mm-hmm. He came to Ohio State, switches to corner. Was he perfect? No, he wasn't. Quite frankly, Sonny Styles, his brother, Sonny Styles, struggled at time this year as he also moved positions. Now he moved from safety to linebacker, which is significantly easier than moving from wide receiver to corner. You know, at least Sonny Styles stayed on the same side of the ball. But, you know, I give him a little bit of grace. I think he's incredibly talented. I think honestly, there's a bit of value in starting a pair of brothers on the defense. There's a level of communication there that's significant. I think, I feel perfectly fine about Lorenzo Styles as the nickelback. Perfectly fine.
Okay. All right.
He might not have the raw talent as the guy behind him in Bryce West, but in a defense that's going to be pretty young, I'm going to feel better with the Lorenzo Styles out there.
All right. And that's our defensive line there. Just in time here.
Yeah. We wrapped that up right on the mark. Kyle, do you have anything in Kyle's corner?
Oh gosh, do I have anything in Kyle's corner? The basketball team had a big win.
Yeah.
They had a big win against Purdue there. That was in Purdue as well. They needed that. They were going on a slump there. They need to get some good wins here coming into February. But we'll see. They got a tough road ahead of them here, but they got to get some wins going here.
Can we take some of that $3.3 million that we were gonna pay Coach Knowles and maybe go get a an actual experienced coach for the basketball team?
Maybe. I mean, the good thing here, looking at the rest of their schedule, Jared, they don't have a single ranked team to play. Currently ranked team the rest of the schedule here.
All right, we're on that Indiana plan now.
We are, and they play Indiana the last game.
It just to go back to the defensive coordinator conversation real quick. I need to acknowledge that NIU, Indiana, and is referencing the stats that they put up as a defense this year. They didn't, NIU especially, obviously, didn't exactly play the toughest competition. So that can lead to some of those stats. But at least in the case of NIU, the talent is at least relatively similar, But yeah. Anything else in Kyle's Corner?
No, I think that's it.
All right. Tonight's ending music will be brought to you by a band out of Columbus called the Cordial Sins. Once again, that is the Cordial Sins. So with all that being said, I'd like to encourage everyone to drink local beer, listen to local music, and of course, support local podcasters. Once again, these are the Cordial Sins.